Special Counsel Robert Mueller's 22-month-long investigation into President Trump concludes with no evidence of conspiracy or collusion with Russia. I'm your host, B.A. Jarvis, and you are watching The Golden Door. Alright, we're back, and I just want to say off the top that the videos on the CBC that I mentioned at the end of my last video are still coming, so make sure to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out, but some news is just too big to ignore. William Barr, Attorney General of the United States, released his 4-page summary report this evening of the 22-month-long investigation by Special Counsel Robert Mueller, which announces the investigation did not find evidence that President Donald Trump's campaign or anyone associated with it conspired or coordinated with Russia or Russian officials to influence the 2016 presidential election. Barr also states in his summary that the report does not exonerate the president on obstruction of justice charges related to the firing of FBI Director James Comey, but rather that the evidence is a mixed bag. Nevertheless, it's not strong enough to proceed with charges against the president or any further members of his campaign, which seems likely to put the matter to bed from a legal standpoint. President Trump, naturally, is claiming victory this evening. Tweeting from Air Force One, the president states, "No collusion, no obstruction, complete and total exoneration. Keep America great." Now, obviously, the president is overstating things a little bit with the total exoneration comment, but nevertheless, I think this can be safely interpreted as a huge victory for Trump and the Republican Party. I can't think of any precedent for an American president, or any head of state for that matter, having an investigation that questions the very legitimacy of their election for nearly 2 years after they take office, but hopefully this restores some confidence for American voters in their electoral process. Now, for many paying attention, this doesn't come as too much of a surprise. There have been hints for the last couple of months that the report would be released to an anticlimactic conclusion, evoking the ire of those hoping it would finally be the silver bullet needed to take down the president. Even in the last week, it was known that there would be no further indictments as a result of Special Counsel Mueller's investigation. The Democrats, of course, have accepted the findings of the report, thanked Robert Mueller for his diligent efforts leaving no stone unturned, and issued a public apology to the president on behalf of the Democratic caucus and the American people. No, that's not what happened. Not only are they doubling down on their demand to see the entire report, Democratic leaders are now demanding to see all evidence associated with the report, which I imagine includes thousands and thousands of pages of transcripts, logs, and other documents they would inevitably use to build their own conclusions. In the few responses released so far, there have been zero mentions of Russia collusion at all. Obstruction of justice has become the new collusion narrative for the Democrats, and they have completely turned on the Attorney General and discredited any notion of him being an impartial arbitrator. It's actually worse than that. Democratic officials are even hedging their bets on the Russia collusion findings, stating that, quote, "Based on the interpretation of the Attorney General, there was no evidence of collusion or conspiracy." So essentially, they don't trust William Barr's opinion even on that. It seems to me that there would be evidence contained in the report, or there wouldn't be. Would the Attorney General of the United States be able to tell the difference between what is evidence and what is not evidence, or is the charge that he is just such a shill for the president that he could simply ignore obvious evidence? I think it's fair to point out here that this wasn't just the sole interpretation of the Attorney General, it was his office. Rod Rosenstein, Deputy Attorney General, who is no fan of Trump, came to the same conclusion. So saying that Barr was exhibiting the bias that they are suggesting here doesn't seem to hold water. Jerry Nadler, Democratic chair of the House Judiciary Committee, calls the president unconscionable for claiming victory and exoneration. Calling it a hasty, partisan interpretation of the facts, he demands that as much information can be made public should be made public, and that the American people are entitled to a full accounting, which is on its face a little ridiculous. When do you ever see all of the underlying evidence to any investigation? Did we, for instance, get all of the underlying evidence in the report into Hillary Clinton's emails? I actually don't know the answer to that question, but I'm presuming we didn't, otherwise I think it would be a fact that was mentioned in today's talking points. But if someone could provide an answer in the comments section, that would be greatly appreciated. Even if it was completely released, what, presumably, would the average American do with all that information? I certainly wouldn't know what to do with it, or how to prioritize it or interpret it legally, and I doubt many others outside of a small subset of the legal profession would either. What would happen is it would be interpreted by news outlets, and then a simplified version of the events would be presented to the public, which of course is exactly what the Attorney General released this evening. Those calling out Attorney General William Barr for bias are, of course, Democrats and the liberal media, and to think that they would have the capacity to offer an unbiased interpretation when the Office of the Attorney General cannot is, of course, laughable. Democratic presidential candidate Beto O'Rourke, after the release of the summary report, is saying that the president sought to conspire with a foreign power during his election campaign before issuing a rallying cry that the final verdict would be delivered by the American people at the ballot boxes. I'm actually having a hard time understanding O'Rourke's allegation here. Is he suggesting that President Trump sought to conspire with Russia, but just wasn't able to find any Russians willing to work with him? This seems to completely jump the shark, even for our bizarre political landscape we find ourselves in, and shows a willingness to completely disregard any semblance of due process in the conclusions. Now, this question comes from a legitimate place of legal ignorance on the matter, but wouldn't the obstruction of justice be related to the collusion? If there was no conspiracy or collusion to influence the election, what justice exactly would the president be obstructing? Again, I would love if someone could answer the question in the comments section. I think that it's likely the full report will be released eventually, but not all of the underlying evidence and testimony, because at that point you're basically saying you don't trust Mueller to even write the report. So what do you guys think? Are we nearing the end of this bizarro world saga? Let me know what you think in the comments section. As someone from Canada who has been on the outside looking in at this, I would particularly be interested in hearing from Americans. Do you have confidence in your Attorney General? Are the Democrats essentially grasping at straws at this point? Either way, if you have nothing else to do tonight, I suggest grabbing a big bowl of popcorn, popping over to the comments section of your favorite news outlet, and watching the blowhards from both sides spout unqualified opinions on the matter. As always, guys, thank you very much for watching this video. If you want to see more content like this, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and stay tuned for more. Until next time, this has been The Golden Door.